Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. Poland is moving forward with its first nuclear power plant on the Baltic coast after the EU approved 14.2 billion euros in state aid earlier this week, aiming to cut coal use and boost clean energy. The 3.7 gigawatt facility will be built with U.S. technology and financing and is a key part of the country's broader energy transition. Joining us now to discuss the project and its implications is Daniel Czyżewski, energy analyst at the Polska Natury Foundation. Good to have you back in the studio. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me again.
So let's talk about timing here, because we heard from the Prime Minister in Poland, Tusk. He said very much this is going to start right away, but then there's a plan for concrete in 2028, the construction up to 2036. So what realistically are we looking at for this whole project to finally be done?
Well, the devil is in the details, as always, because from one point of view, you can say that we've already started building first nuclear power plant. The supporting infrastructure is needed in this project. You know, the ground, the cutting of the trees, the energy transmission lines, the roads. It's all being built as we speak. So there's no clear beginning point, start point of this nuclear power plant. I think that the actual power plant, the first concrete that will be laid, is set for 2028. But you can argue that we've already started building that even before the European Commission decision of public aid.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but still, nevertheless, a long project. Now, let's also talk about the price tag. I mean, we're looking at some of these expenditures, estimations around full capital, 42 to 46 billion euros. That's a hefty price tag. Looking at also the state aid that was also now, let's say, released by the European Union, how much does this financing now work? I mean, is this something that could have even gotten this far without the EU funding? I mean, there's Americans also involved. So how, let's say, complex is financing of this whole facility?
Well, from the general point of view, from general breakdown, it's not very complex because 30% covers the state with public financing, and 70% is foreign capital. I mean, the loans, the credits, and so on. And there's a large coalition of financial institutions that take part in it. The Polish financial institutions, the foreign financial institutions, mostly the export credit agencies, mostly the US Exim Bank covers those loans. So 30% state, 70% loans. I think this is typical in those kinds of investments. This is a large investment, probably one of the largest in Polish history. As you mentioned, 46 billion euros, 192 billion Polish zlotys. It's reasonable way of financing this nuclear power plant. Of course, we have to add that nuclear power plant is very expensive. It's 8 times more expensive than the gas power plants when we break down to 2 megawatt of installed capacity. But there's a kind of there's a lot of details to it, because the most reasonable thing to do economically now with our Polish energy mix would be to go to 2 major energy sources, which is gas and renewables. But there are 2 fundamental problems for each of those, for those energy sources, one for each. With gas, the problem is obvious. We don't have it. We don't have it in our territory. We don't extract it. We have to import this gas. For now, we import gas from allies. We have proven, checked, safe supply chains. We import it from Norway, from the United States, and other countries. But we don't know what will happen in the next 3, 5, 10, 20, 40 years. We don't know what conflicts, black swans will be in place in that time. And renewables, the problem is much more simpler. They are unstable in generation of energy. So that kind of energy mix would be risky, would be just risky in the long term. And nuclear power plant, with nuclear power plant, we buy safety. This is the investment that will keep us from the problems that would appear in gas imports or any any difficulties with that, and with unstable generation of renewables.
You also mentioned, I mean, cost. I mean, this is very much a done deal. You said, though, however, nuclear is 8 times more expensive. Renewables is also in the mix. There's this whole idea of having Poland decarbonize, well, a lot of the EU decarbonize by around 2040. The mix in place, it's also gone renewables, but still the majority of the energy mix in this country, in Poland, is still fossil fuel based, is still coal based. So looking at everything, how this transfers, is this, let's say, effective enough? Will we get there fast enough? And also you mentioned renewables. I want to put in offshore wind, etc. Is that going to compete here with nuclear? Is that maybe the faster alternative? Where we are with this whole energy mix?
Well, it depends, as always, in the energy sector. One nuclear power plant will not cover much of our energy consumption. We still have in our energy strategies from 6 to 9 gigawatts of nuclear energy, so 2 or 3 nuclear power plants. We still don't have a decision from the government how many it will be. It depends. With nuclear is stable and nuclear is clean, of course, low emission or zero emission, really. And that also is important factor. We have a climate policy. We want to decarbonize. We ditch coal, but in place of coal, in many energy power plants, we will cover it with gas. So it's also fossil fuels, of course, not as emission intensive as coal, but still. Well, from the other perspective, long-term perspective, the nuclear power plants are also safe in a way that fossil fuels will end someday in the world, entire world, and we have now reserves of gas and oil estimated for 50 years. We don't know what will happen, for example, at the end of 21st century. If we will have
5 years is already tough to predict.
Yeah, but if we will have, we can predict that we will have gas in 5 years, but in 50, 60, 70, we don't know that. If we will invest in nuclear power plants, we'll have stable, reliable, low-emission energy throughout this century, or maybe even further.
Okay. Safety has come up as one of the topics we've already touched on. That's one of the arguments, that this is not just for security reasons. This is good for Poland, for the region, energy security. It's a safe sort of energy as well. There'll be some people who will criticize that and say that nuclear power still remains dangerous. Let's talk about public perception in all this. I mean, how has that changed? Because this is not the first time something like this was tried in Poland. This was, I think, in the 80s, also nearby, near the Baltic. That stopped because of Chernobyl. Since then, we've had Fukushima. Also, public perception. How has that changed over the years? And how much does that influence this decision here in this country?
Well, public perception shifts, of course. After Chernobyl, most of societies, Western and not only, were afraid of nuclear energy, and the governments reflected that and just didn't invest in those installations. Well, it kind of stayed that way in the beginning of this century, but then we had Fukushima, and the public perception was not so great. Even in Poland, we had support of nuclear energy on the level of 40% or something like that. We saw Germany that after Fukushima decided to end with nuclear energy. Based on those social polls. But in the 20s, we can say that support is much bigger in Poland. We have 70 of 80% of support, and well, this is the moment that Polish society fully approves those projects, if there will be another nuclear power plant. So the politicians, the governments have green light to invest even large amounts of money. Of course, I said that it is much more expensive than gas power plants or renewable energy, but we are still in the mainstream. China wants to have 500 gigawatts installed capacity by 2050 in nuclear. United States want to have 300 gigawatts of installed capacity. So the whole world.
3.7 in Poland. I think, with this one,
yeah. Of course, the scale is totally different. These are big countries, very energy intensive, and we are talking about the future. US now have around 100 gigawatts, and China around 60. But they have very big ambitions. Even despite those costs, they also have cheaper options, right? But they want to go into nuclear energy because they also see this long-term perspective that fossil fuel will end, and that this is safety. That we have to. Of course, take into account climate change. I'm saying mostly things about economy right now, but the climate change is still existing, and governments are taking that into account.
Okay. Dan, you mentioned also the big players. You mentioned the Americans in this. I mean, one of the big partners here is American technology, American know-how. It's Bechtel, it's Westinghouse. What does that mean practically for Poland in terms of technology transfer, in terms of employment? Some would argue that perhaps this is a different kind of dependency. What's the strategic element of the American involvement in this?
Of course, the decision to choose Americans was political. Though this decision was made by the previous government, the peace government, and they are oriented to Washington more than EU. But what we can take out of this is our own Polish nuclear technology. The technology transfer is very important. This is the way to cut the cost, by the way. And also, if we can get as much as possible from this large investment, we have to invest in Polish companies. We have to make deals with Polish contractors. Local content should be at as high level as possible. This money have to be pumped into Polish economy. This is the way to develop Polish economy along this project. We have large energy project. The grid. This is I said almost 200 billion zlotys, but investments in the grid, in energy grid, until 2040 will be are estimated on around 330 billion zlotys. So this is the not very well seen area of Polish economy, and we have to make sure that Polish society, Polish economy will benefit from that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And also looking at, I mean, with these projects, they usually take a long time, well over around, close to 10 years. What do you think about the sustainability of all this in terms of the timeline? Will it be reached? Will it go over budget? What's the risk there that this will get much bigger than the already quite large price tag here?
Well, projects like that in Europe right now, and in US for that matter, are extended, are late, a couple of years usually, and of course are over budget. We don't know what will happen in Poland. I can say that as for now, this project is sticking to the schedule. I don't know how it will go into the future, but we have to remember that those projects that were starting 10 years ago or 15 years ago were in the very miserable time for nuclear energy. The governments wouldn't support the nuclear energy companies, were sort of in a bad state, not really in a good position. So this time the 20s regarding nuclear energy are much better. The industry is developing. The countries, the governments are announcing new targets. The climate in the EU has changed. In the previous decade, it was very much against nuclear energy. It was marginalized in the EU, but now it's officially taken into account in energy transition, and there are a lot of ways there are. I think that we can make this this nuclear power plant operational by 2036. This is the realistic project, especially after this quick decision from European Commission, because it was expected to take much longer.
Right. So we'll see how long it takes for construction. Probably a few years yet, though. But look, Daniel Czyżewski, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming and sharing all your insights.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks. But stay tuned as ever right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.